Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. If you're following my channel, you might have noticed that I usually play melee characters or melee builds in RPGs. I just think that big two-handed swords are the coolest weapon type, that's pretty much the reason why. But I played a bunch of games with fun magic gameplay and you might remember this particular video from almost a year ago. While that video was focused on magic systems in particular, in this one we're going to focus on some other games with fun magic gameplay in general. I highly recommend watching that video first if you didn't already, because we mentioned a lot of games with fun and interesting magic systems. If you don't see some particular game that had a great magic gameplay, there is a high possibility I already talked about it in that first video. Anyway, here are some more games with great magic gameplay, which left a lasting impression on me. Number 5. Fictorum. Fictorum is a game that's entirely focused on casting magic and destroying stuff. To be honest, Fictorum feels more like a proof of concept or a demo rather than a full game, so I have a hard time recommending buying this game even though it's only like $10 on Steam. But the reason why it's on the list should be obvious by now. Right from the start you play as a powerful mage who can destroy houses with strong spells. You progress through different maps by destroying stuff and killing enemies, and you have some character progression as well in terms of new items and spells. You have 3 different ways of increasing the effectiveness of your spell. At the beginning you get high velocity, multi-shot and high explosive, but you will get more effects as you play the game. It's really fun casting powerful spells in Fictorum, but unfortunately that's pretty much it. Everything else in the game is almost not even worth mentioning. I would love to see a similar gameplay but in a fully fledged open world RPG, so I hope that some aspiring developer is watching this and maybe takes some ideas from Fictorum. It's a shame because Fictorum could have been so much more than just a magic playground where you go and kill stuff and continue to the next map. Even though that's the case, a lot of people seem to enjoy the game. Well, according to Steam reviews at least, and my comments on the previous video I did for games with great magic systems. That's probably the main reason why I decided to include this game on the list. It just goes to show you how good is the foundation of this game, even though it feels really unfinished. We can only hope that we see a similar magic gameplay in the future in a fully developed RPG. Number 4. Nox. Nox is an action RPG that came out almost 22 years ago. This game came out just a couple of months before Diablo 2, and I think that's one of the reasons why it got overlooked and kinda forgotten, unfortunately. At the first glance, Nox might seem like just another hack and slash isometric RPG from early 2000s, but it's so much more than that. The story is kinda goofy and really simple, but interesting enough to keep you invested in the campaign. Jack is the name of the main character, but you can name him however you want and customize him a bit. By the way, everything about this menu just screams late 90s gaming. The visuals and the sound effects as well. I love it. Anyway, Jack just wanted to watch the TV in peace and get some dinner, but he gets pulled into this fantasy world of Nox. Like I said, it's kinda goofy, but it's definitely fun. You get to choose between 3 different character types, and this is the most important decision you will make in the game. The thing is, the game has 3 different campaigns, and each of these 3 characters has a unique progression path. But we're here to talk about the magic gameplay in particular, and that's where the wizard class comes into play. The way this character works is pretty simple. The game gives you new spells as you progress further in the campaign. But it also gives you a lot of freedom with combining the spells however you see fit. Nox has an amazing sense of progression because it feels really balanced, although the game is really light on RPG elements. It's definitely focused more on action, and that's precisely why the gameplay feels really good. As a wizard you need to aim most of your spells and kite enemies, because your character is pretty squishy. The controls are responsive and snappy, which is really important because the gameplay in Nox relies a lot on players' muscle memory. Nox is not completely deprived of RPG elements. You will find some stronger gear as you progress, although that aspect of the game is not that important compared to something like Diablo 2. That's because the game is really focused on your mechanical skills rather than your gear. Nux doesn't have randomly generated maps, it's a lot more linear experience, but it has a lot of secrets that you can discover along the way, as well as interesting puzzles. The maps are designed around these 3 different character types, so your spells are not only used in combat, but solving puzzles as well. There are a decent amount of puzzles that you have to solve during the campaign, and the game teaches you this quite early. The game doesn't hold your hand though, and you have to figure things out by yourself, which was a common thing in games from that period. There is a multiplayer mode as well, and according to a lot of people who played it, it's amazing and really skill based. That's not so hard to believe because, like I said, even the campaign requires you to have some decent mechanical skills. I never got the chance to try out the multiplayer myself, but I had to mention it. I highly suggest playing as a wizard if you decide to revisit this old classic on the PC. I got it on GOG and I had to run it in Windows 98 compatibility mode because that's the only way the game will work on Windows 10. Number 3. Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning. I recently made a review for the new Kingdoms of Amalur DLC called Fatesworn, and you can check that video out if you're interested by clicking on the card up above. It felt really good to see some brand new content for such an old RPG, even though the quality of the DLC wasn't exactly phenomenal, but it was more than enough to make me come back to this game and do another playthrough. Regardless of what you think about Kingdoms of Amalur in general, I think that everyone could agree that the combat system in this game was pretty damn good. It's definitely on the button mashing side, but the smooth fast-paced action is not something you would often see in open world RPGs. The magic gameplay was no different in this underrated RPG. No matter which playstyle you choose, you will have a lot of fun with the gameplay. When it comes to magic in particular, it all depends on the talent tree and the weapons you decide to use. The default mage weapon is the staff, and even the regular attacks with this weapon felt great. Then you add different spells that you can learn from the talent tree and combine that with the fate cards, which give you passive bonuses. All of that combined created enjoyable magic gameplay which can keep you busy for hundreds of hours. Like I said, it can definitely feel a bit repetitive, but I never found it boring in my playthroughs. Even before this new DLC, the game had plenty of content to keep you busy for a long time, although there are a lot of side quests which are not that interesting to do. But considering that it's always really fun to engage in combat, even though simple side quests where you have to kill a bunch of things can be a lot of fun. I didn't even mention how the gear affects your character. There are a lot of unique armor sets in the game that you can find on your playthrough. Before the remastered version came out, getting these unique gear pieces was really hard. That's because the RNG system was kinda aggressive and it was rare to complete armor sets in the game. However, when the remaster came out, they did some changes to the RNG system, which made it possible to finally start completing these armor sets. It's still not that easy though, and you'll have to loot a ton of chests and containers on your playthrough. As you would expect, the game doesn't lack cool mage armor sets. The mage talent tree doesn't have a ton of unique spells, but it's a decent amount. And Kingdoms of Amalur relies a lot on your weapon usage, not just your spells. You're able to combine 2 different weapon types by a press of a button. Scepter is another weapon type which fits quite nicely with all mage builds, although I think the chakrams are a lot cooler. Chakrams come with some of the nice stat bonuses for mages, and they probably have one of the best move sets in the game. Even if you didn't play this game for some reason, I think it's not so hard to see why the magic gameplay is a lot of fun. Number 2. In Verbis Virtus. In Verbis Virtus is probably the most unique game on this list. The premise of this magic gameplay is great, and the execution is pretty good as well. You get to use your voice for casting different spells in the game, so I guess this won't be everyone's cup of tea. But since this video is about interesting magic gameplay, it definitely deserves to be on the list. In Verbis Virtus is more of an adventure game, heavily focused on puzzle elements. It's not a fast-paced game, unlike all other games on this list. In Verbis Virtus you have to take your time and think about what you're doing. You start the game in the desert and you enter a mysterious cave. Then you start learning about the spells and the environment by exploring everything that you can. There is a lot of backtracking involved and some people are not a fan of that, but the game is mostly linear. Some areas are restricted at first until you figure out what to do. That usually involves some spell that you didn't learn yet, so you have to choose a different path to explore. You learn new spells by finding these magical stones, and like I said before, you need to use your voice to cast them. Lumetial. Nice. Your journal is a very useful tool because you can play the sound of the spell and learn how to pronounce it properly.
Ectolume.
I didn't have a lot of issues with casting spells with my voice. You don't need to be extremely precise. Tial Uda. Lumetial.
You're a wizard.
Even though I usually forget the actual words I need to speak and I open the journal quite often. I don't want to show you a lot of gameplay because it's easy to spoil this game. You really need to pay attention to what you're doing. If you get stuck, I recommend carefully reading the notes from the journal because that's usually the answer you need. Besides the spell stones, you will find stones that give you useful information about your surroundings. And like I said, this can be very useful if you're stuck. In Verbis Virtus is a very relaxing game to play and it's really immersive. However, if you don't want your neighbors to think that you're a member of a cult or something, you might want to stay far away from this game. All jokes aside, speaking into a microphone while playing a game is not a huge barrier to entry. But in Verbis Virtus is definitely a niche game, and that's probably the reason why it never managed to get more attention. It's like a hidden gem and it's worth trying out if you're looking for something different to play. Wingardium Leviosa. This game sucks. Before we get to the number 1 on this list, it's time for some honorable mentions. I had a chance to try out some of these games, but I never finished them, so I can't really talk in depth about them. I included some games that were mentioned a lot in the comment section of the previous video as well. Anyway, at number 5 on our honorable mention list we got Avencast Rise of the Mage. Number 4, Wizard of Legends. At number 3 we have Exanima. Number 2, Soul Sacrifice. And number 1 goes to Tales of Magile. Number 1, Grim Dawn. If you're a fan of Diablo-like action RPGs, you probably heard about this game or even played it before. If you did, I think you won't be surprised why it's my number 1 pick for this particular list. While some other games on this list have a better gameplay from the technical side of things, like Kingdoms of Amalur, Grim Dawn blows out everything out of the water with the sheer amount of options you have while creating your builds. The big reason for that is the dual mastery system, which allows the player to combine 2 different masteries. It's all up to you which spells you're going to get while leveling and how you're going to combine them in your builds. Besides that core progression, there is an insane amount of armor sets and weapons, which can also give you some unique spells to use in your builds. Not to mention the huge constellation system, which gives you a ton of passive abilities and unique spells that can proc in certain situations. And you have a total control over these systems. For example, you can put these procs on different spells, which you previously learned from a mastery of your choice. Long story short, your high-level mage-type character will have a ton of different effects and spells, but you can also choose to keep it simple if that's how you wish to play. Whatever the case might be, your high-level mage character will feel immensely powerful. Killing things in this game feels great by default, and blowing them up with your spells feels even better. Grim Dawn is constantly being supported with free content updates and patches, and it has more than enough content to keep you busy for thousands of hours. Well, if you like these types of games, that is. But even if you don't plan to play it for so long, you can get a lot of hours from it by just going through the campaign. Even though the premise of the main story is no different from other Diablo-like RPGs, you know, save the world from the great evil and stuff, the story itself is pretty interesting. But one of my favorite aspects of this game is how open the map feels compared to other Diablo-like games. I have a retrospective video that I published back in April, so you can check that out if you wish to hear me speak in depth about this game. To go back to our original topic, one of the best ways to experience this game is definitely by playing a mage character. Arcanist is arguably the most solid base for every mage character, and you can add another mastery of your choice when you reach level 10. Grim Dawn has that old Diablo-like difficulty system, which means that you have to finish the game on one difficulty in order to unlock the next one. But this is intended for players who plan to stick around and play a lot more than just going through the campaign. If you ask me, the best way to play the game on normal difficulty is to experiment with your build as much as possible. Higher difficulties won't give you a lot of space for experimentation, because the game expects you to know what you're going to do with your character, especially when it comes to the gear. But anyway, I could have easily included this game in the first video about the great magic systems, and it would probably be a better fit than in this video. However, Grim Dawn deserves all the praise for its magic gameplay and the vast customization system, which can keep you busy for quite a while. I really can't recommend this game enough. And that would be it for this video. You probably know a lot more games with great magic gameplay that I didn't mention here, so feel free to tell me about them in the comments below. Like I said, I already did a similar video almost a year ago, where we talked about some other games with great magic systems, so check that out as well. Your feedback is highly appreciated. At least a couple of games I played and featured in this video are from your recommendation in the comment section of the first video. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, pressing the thumbs up button would mean a lot. Don't forget to subscribe for more RPG contents. If you want to support the channel in the long run, consider becoming a Patreon or a YouTube member. You can get your name on the end credits, as well as some other perks like early access to videos, Discord roles, my plans for future content, etc, etc. That will be all, and I'll see you in the next one.